It's March 2025, and the Kursk region of Russia has become a crucible of conflict, a landscape where the tides of war are turning with stunning speed. What started as Ukraine's bold incursion into Russian territory last summer is now a distant memory, overshadowed by a Russian resurgence that's gaining unstoppable momentum. Cast your mind back to August 2024, when Ukraine launched a surprise offensive, capturing over 1,250 square kilometers and nearly 100 settlements in days. It was a daring strike aimed at shaking Moscow's war effort and securing a bargaining chip for talks, a move Russian leaders branded a desperate provocation. Fast forward to March 12th, 2025. Vladimir Putin steps into the Kursk war room, not in civilian attire, but as a military leader in full army gear, a striking symbol of resolve. At the heart of this turnaround, he's guiding Russia toward what feels like an imminent triumph. This visit is no routine check-in. It's a calculated move, timed just 48 hours after Ukraine agreed to a US-brokered 30-day ceasefire, a tentative pause Russia hasn't confirmed. Instead, Putin's presence signals a different intent, a final push to reclaim Kursk before any truce takes root.
In fact, our task in the near future, as soon as possible, is to completely defeat the enemy, who is entrenched and still fighting on the territory of the Kursk region, to completely liberate the territory of the Kursk region and restore the situation on the state border.
His words echo through the command center. A mission to crush the enemy, free Kursk, and secure the border swiftly. It's a directive that brushes aside ceasefire talk, setting the stage for an all-out offensive to finish what Ukraine started.
Of course, I ask you to consider the creation of a security zone along the state border in the future. I would also like to draw attention to this.
But Putin's vision goes further. He calls for a security zone along the border, a buffer to prevent future incursions. It's a strategic plan, born from this crisis, delivered with the weight of a leader fully immersed in the fight.
All those who are on the territory of the Kursk region, who are committing crimes against the civilian population here, who are opposing our armed forces, law enforcement agencies, and special services, are terrorists according to the laws of the Russian Federation. But these people, of course, must be treated first and foremost as terrorists in accordance with the laws of the Russian Federation. We treat all people humanely, and we must treat all those who find themselves in our hands in the future. At the same time, I would like to remind you that foreign mercenaries are not covered by the 1949 Geneva Convention on the treatment of prisoners of war.
He frames the enemy as terrorists under Russian law, a stern label for those opposing his forces, yet balances it with a call for humane treatment, except for foreign mercenaries who, he notes, fall outside Geneva protections. It's a measured stance that underscores both resolve and restraint amid the battle's heat. Backing this mission is Chief of Staff Valery Gerasimov, whose briefing to Putin paints a vivid picture of Russia's upper hand. He details a campaign that's rolled back Ukraine's gains with precision and force, a ledger of progress that's hard to ignore.
In total, in the course of offensive actions, more than 1,100 square kilometers of territory have been liberated, which accounts for over 86% of the area previously occupied by the enemy. Over the time of military operations in the Kursk direction, the enemy lost more than 67,000 servicemen. These are the most trained and highly motivated units of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, AFU, as well as a foreign mercenary unit.
Gerasimov's numbers tell the story. Over 100 square kilometers reclaimed, 86% of Ukraine's foothold, while Kiev's forces have suffered a staggering blow, losing 67,000 troops, including their best fighters and foreign volunteers.
In total, about 7,000 military vehicles have been destroyed over this time, including 391 tanks, 2,180 armored combat vehicles, over 1,000 artillery weapons and mortars. During the autumn-winter campaign, the AFU command centered its main strength on the Kursk area. The numbers confirm it. Thus, the relatively small AFU Kursk staging point accounts for about 19% of personnel losses across the entire area of special military operation, and more than 40% of equipment losses. Counting the total for 6 months, the direction accounts for 19% in personnel and 40% in equipment losses.
7,000 Ukrainian vehicles destroyed, tanks, armored units, artillery, amounting to 19% of their personnel losses and 40% of their equipment losses across the war. It's a disproportionate hit, proof that Kursk has become a graveyard for Kiev's ambitions.
The Kiev regime aimed at setting up a so-called strategic staging point in the Kursk region to use it as a bargaining chip in potential negotiations with Russia. In addition, the Ukrainian leadership attempted to use the Kursk region's foray to halt the advance of our troops and draw them away from Donbass. These enemy plans completely failed. The results were achieved because of the courageous, selfless, and well-coordinated actions of the troops and volunteer units of the Sever group of forces, as well as the effective use of Air and Space Forces aviation and the unmanned aerial vehicle unit.
Gerasimov drives the point home. Ukraine's goal, to turn Kursk into a strategic asset and divert Russian focus from Donbass, has collapsed, undone by the bravery of units like the Sever Group and innovative tactics that caught the enemy off guard.
I would like to particularly highlight the heroic actions of the Joint Assault Unit of the Veterans Volunteer Detached Force, as well as the 11th Airborne Assault Brigade, the 30th Motorized Rifle Regiment, and the Akhmat Special Forces Unit. Over 600 members of this joint force went about 15 kilometers inside a gas pipeline and reached the AFU rear lines. These actions were unexpected for the enemy and contributed to the slowdown of its defense and the development of our advance in the Kursk region. As a result, over the past 5 days alone, 24 settlements and 259 square kilometers of Kursk region have been liberated by the actions of the Kursk troops in all directions. The invasion area has been reduced by more than 2.5 times.
He shines a light on a daring operation. 600 troops threading a gas pipeline to strike Ukraine's rear, sparking a swift advance that freed 24 settlements and 259 square kilometers in just 5 days, shrinking the invasion zone by over 2.5 times. This momentum has carried Russian forces beyond Kursk into Ukraine's Sumy region, disrupting reserves and widening their grip, a tangible step toward Putin's security zone vision, with the border now in sight.
Ukrainian servicemen, seeing the futility of further resistance, have actively begun to surrender. 430 servicemen have been captured. Supreme Commander-in-Chief, the Russian armed forces continue to defeat the AFU units in the Kursk region, with the objective of completing the liberation of the region to reach the Russian state border as soon as possible.
Gerasimov raps with a stark reality. 430 Ukrainian surrenders signal a breaking point as Russia presses forward to finish the job, liberating Kursk fully, just as Putin ordered. But this surge has left scars. Sudzha, once Ukraine's anchor in Kursk, lies devastated by Russian airstrikes. Ukraine's army chief admits it's almost completely destroyed, a haunting backdrop to a fight that's tested both sides. He claims his forces still hold, repelling 8 Russian assaults in a day, but his tone shifts. We maneuver to more advantageous positions, he says, a careful admission of retreat, prioritizing survival as Russia closes in. Preserving soldiers' lives is his focus, leaning on drones and artillery to slow the inevitable. As long as it's appropriate and necessary, he vows, a fragile promise against a tide that's turning fast, with the ceasefire clock ticking. As Putin steps out of the war room, his army gear marks a defining moment, a leader driving Russia to reclaim Kursk before peace can settle. Ukraine's bold thrust teeters on collapse, its defeat a matter of days. With Moscow racing the 30-day ceasefire, this is Putin's charge, and for Kyiv, a darkening horizon.